Hello guys, I hope you're doing well today. We are just going to be looking at how to create virtual machine in Hyper-V. So last year I had a document that I wrote and the steps are very simple to follow. I showed how to create VM in Hyper-V. So this is relevant for following operating system: Windows Server 2016, 2022, 2019, and all of that. Even Windows 10 and Windows 11, you can create this virtual machine in Hyper-V if the following conditions are met. So one, virtualization must be enabled on your machine. So how do you know that? You can go to Task Manager, and then when you open Task Manager, you can go to Performance, and down below here you're going to see virtualization. So if this is enabled, then it means that you can run Hyper-V. And then when you check that, at least you must be on Windows 10 Pro, as Windows 10 Home is not going to work for you. You can also do this in Windows 11. So all the details regarding the requirements are in the document here, which I have posted. You can also request that they can be reposted so that you can have a look at them. So moving on, you go to turn on. You just type turn on your Windows search, and you're going to see turn on Windows features. Turn Windows features on or off. So let's just click on it, and then you would see Hyper-V, right? So check this box and then click OK on your machine. And then if you go and check for Hyper-V in your PC after restarting, right, you will see this Hyper-V manager. So for Hyper-V manager, I have a machine that is here which is running. I'm just going to shut it down because I want to show you a new one and how to create a new one from the scratch. So I just want to first of all head on to creating a virtual switch. I have some switches here, but I want to create it, in this video so that you can know how to create a virtual switch. So we may just start from there. So you come to Virtual Switch Manager, and then what you want to do is to create a virtual switch. Virtual Switch Manager comes up this way. I want to make my network private network for now, so I will click on create virtual switch, and I just want to call it just because I have other virtual switch, just to be very short. So I want to call it Joseph June _V switch. Okay, sorry for the long name. It's just because I have quite a few, so I want to be very specific. So yes, because I have selected private earlier, so it's just going to pick private for me. And then what I can do is to click on apply, and I click on OK when this is done applying. So that means the virtual switch is now created. So what's the next step? The next step will mean that we want to create the virtual machine itself. Okay, so what we will do is to click on new, and then we click on virtual machine. So when we do that, it gives us this detail. The wizard helps you to create a virtual machine. You can use virtual machine in place of physical machine. This is just giving you what virtual machine actually means, so you can do next. So when this comes, what you kind of give it, maybe I just want to give it Joseph June DC, maybe because I want to make it a domain controller in the future, right? So I can just do it this way. So the next point is, where do I want this virtual machine saved? So I will just check this box, and then I will browse to a particular folder on my desktop that I call virtual machine. So I'll just select folders, right? And I'll click on next. So when I do, I'm going to select either generation 1 or generation 2. So for generation 1, they are used for older operating system, older versions of operating system. It can be 32-bit or 64-bit guest operating system, and provide virtual hardware which has been available on all previous versions of Hyper-V. So for generation 2 Hyper-V are of more modern hypervisors, right? So this virtual machine generation provide support for newer virtualization features that has UEFI based firmware and requires a supported 64-bit guest operating system. I will use the documents to explain all of this when our VM is loading up. Okay, so but we're just going to move on at this point by clicking on generation 2 and then we click on next. So this is talking about the startup memory. What is going to be the startup memory? So it has to be, if you're going to have a server that has desktop experience, you must at least give it a 2 GB RAM space. Okay, then you can leave this as 1 when you want to do a server without without the graphic user interface, that is without the GUI, without the desktop experience. But if you have to give this memory, you have to check what you have in your host machine. So if I click here and I come to my host machine by coming to this PC, right clicking and going to properties, I will see that I have this machine having 24 GB RAM. So it's okay if I want to give this machine maybe the 4 GB that is on top of it, right? So we'll just come back here and we say, okay, I want to give you 4 GB. Let me just give it 4000 megabytes, right? Then it is important that I check this dynamic memory for this virtual machine, because upon startup, VMs or machines use a lot of memories, but when they are stable, then the memories seem to come down. The amount of memory that are needed seem to come down. So if you uncheck this, it will start up with 4 GB memory, 4000 megabyte memory, and it will remain at 4000 megabyte memory. But if I check this, as soon as the virtual machine turns on completely, then it releases some portion of the startup memory, or the part of the memory allocated to it, back to the host machine for its own functionality. But when there is need for it to need more memory, then it will go and pull again to add to itself, but it can never go beyond what the maximum limit that is given to it, which is 4000 megabytes. I hope that is clear. So we'll just click on next, and then this is asking us which switch do we want to connect this virtual machine that we are creating to, because I already have created a virtual switch and I call that Joseph June V switch. I want to put it there, right, and click on next. So when I click on next, so this is going to tell me how much of hard disk size that you want to give to this machine. So I want to check again my machine. I think here, right? No, not here. I can just quickly check here, and then I will go to this place to see that I have 115 GB storage space remaining. So what I can do is I can come here and I say, okay, let me give out of the memory space I have on my host machine. I just want to give this machine 50 GB disk size. Now, where do I want the hard disk, the virtual disk, to be saved? If I leave it by clicking on next, it's just going to be saving to this default location. But because I want to keep things clean, I have created a folder on my desktop where I save stuff relating to virtual machine. So I'm just going to click on this and I click on select folder so that it can be saved there, 50, and then the next thing I do is I will just click on next. And then here is saying, do you want to install the operating system later or do you want to do it now? I have the file, so I'm just going to pull it up from where I have it saved. So when I get to the location where I have the ISO file for the image saved, I have Windows Server 2016, I have 2019, and I have Windows 10 operating system. But I'm going to pick Windows Server 2016. Of course, it's the lowest here, so that at least if you want to follow along, you should be able to easily follow along with 2016. So I'll just click on open. So I'll click on next. So clicking on next, what this means is that it's going to give me the summary of the machine that I want to build. The name is Joseph June DC, and then the generation is generation 2 type, and then the memory space is 4000. This is telling me a summary, and then the hard disk is going to be saved to this place, and then the operating system will be installed from this same place, right? So what we do is we click on finish. So this is going to configure the virtual machine. which is going to be in the off state. So what I will do is either I right click to click on connect, or I double click on this machine to start it, or I can also come down here to start the machine. But all I want to do is just to double click here, and then it should load up the operating system, and then to tell me to load up the machine. Now here is telling me to start this machine, and then when this is coming up, I need to press to give me option to press any key on my keyboard quickly, just so it can load the OS on the machine. Okay, so at this point it is going to load up the OS, and here is telling me what language do you want to install this. I can choose is in English by default, right? So time and currency, of course, I can decide to fix that, and then coming to the region I want to put it, I can decide to look for particular region of the keyboard or input method, right? So we can do next at this point. So we install the operating system by clicking on this, and then to just say getting things set up for you. Okay, so let's hold on for this. All right, so why this is here, it is saying that do you want to do you have a product key? If you do have, you can type it here. Otherwise you can click on I don't have a product key. But for this particular demo, I don't need to put a product key. This machine, I may be deleting it very soon. So here is where you have the operating system you want to install. Do you want to install Windows Server 2016 standard, or Windows Server 2016 standard with desktop experience, or do you want Data Center 2016 without desktop experience, or this with desktop experience? So I will explain to you. This one here is if you just want a command line interface of Windows Server 2016, but if you want it to have the graphic user interface that you can see here without just being like a command line interface, then you want to go for this. And then this also is going to give you command line interface just as this one would do. And then this last one here, which is Windows Server 2016 Data Center, is going to give you the option to be able to have access to the GUI. So that's what I want to go for at this point. So I will just click on next. So when I click on next, all these are the condition. You have to take your time to read through this to see the licensing agreement, and then you can click on accept, and then you can click on next. Here is saying that which type of installation do you want. I just want to start from the beginning, so I will go for custom. So from here there is nothing to delete, so we just click on next. So we just click this, and this is going to prepare itself and come up. So I want to move this to a different screen, and then I'm going to bring up my document that I've told you about, or we have shown you before, so that we can look at the details that come along with what we have done and where we have gotten to in the document. So like I mentioned from the beginning, this is what you need to do. You can create all of this. And then the processor 1.4, Windows Server minimum hardware requirement, the processor may at least be of 1.4. The minimum RAM is 512, and 512 is for systems or virtual machine without desktop experience. Then if you must have a virtual machine that has desktop experience, then you must give it at least 2 GB storage space. 2 GB RAM, and then the storage space should be at least 32 GB. We give our own is 60, and then we give our RAM 4000 MB. So coming down to this place, so what we did at that point was for us to enable Hyper-V. I've shown you how to do that from turn on Windows features on and off, right? So, and then you search for Hyper-V manager, then we're there, and then you come here to create virtual machine after creating vSwitch. So we created virtual machine, and you can see it here when we clicked on it, and then we read all of this. So the document flows in line with what we have done already. So I just want to get to the point that we've gotten to. So here we selected generation 2. So now you can select the generation of the virtual machine you wish to create, right? The default is generation 1, but you can also have the option to create a generation 2 virtual machine. It is important to understand the key differences between generation 1 and generation 2, as this choice cannot be altered. Right, so once you create a virtual machine with generation 1, you don't have the option to go convert it back to generation 2, to generation 2. So your decision to opt for generation 1 or generation 2 virtual machine hinges on your desired guest operating system. 1, the preferred boot method for deploying the VM. 2, and this is very important, Microsoft advises using generation 2. Okay, so machine to leverage features like the secure boot unless one of the following things is making you to go for virtual machine generation 1. So for generation 1, the only reasons you have to go for that, if you are using an existing pre-built virtual machine disk which isn't compatible with UEFI, you can go for generation 1. Or if generation 2 does not support the operating system that you want to use, because generation 1 is actually meant for legacy operating system, while gen 2 is for the current operating system. Generation 2 does not support the boot method you want to use, then of course you can go for generation 1. Moving on, generation 1 virtual machines support most guest operating system. We know Gen 2 virtual machines support most 64 bits, but Gen 1 support 32-bit as well, version of Windows and more current version of Linux and all of that. So advantages of using generation 2 virtual machine: 1 is secure boot. So this is a feature that verifies the bootloader is signed by the trusted authority in the UEFI database to help prevent unauthorized firmware operating system or UEFI driver from running at boot time. Okay, so larger boot volume is another advantage. So the default startup memory is 1024, which we see there before we change it to 4000, right? And the dynamic memory is selected by default, of course, like I told you, so that you can have that elasticity of the the memory allocated. So going forward, you can see that we had configured our network, so we joined it to the network here, which we call Joseph June vSwitch, right? But at this point in this document, I had not created the vSwitch, probably created it after the whole step is also possible. Okay, so coming to the disk size, of course you remember that we gave here 50, so we browse a particular location and then we hit on next, and then we give the memory based on what we have, right? Based on what we have in our system is what was from there, gave it the 50 gig that we gave it, right? So coming down to this place was where we browsed to where the operating system was available, and then we clicked on it. So review the system. So I want to quickly bring up this because it has finished loading and it's just loading to the Windows. I'm just trying to show you this. So the VM is trying to load. I'll pull it back and then we can continue discussing based on the documentation. When this is ready to the next step, I'm going to show you. So this was where we saw the summary of what the machine can do. What the machine, the property of the machine, talking about the memory space, talking about whether it is connected or not connected. Ours was already connected to a virtual switch, and then at this stage you should see the new virtual machine here in the off mode, and then we right click to click on connect, and then it came up, and then we click on start, and what we have is to click on any button and then the machine start up. Then we selected the location, the Windows Server 2019 was what I installed here, but for 2016 we imputed all here, and then we said we do not have product key, and then we moved down to where we selected this, and then we came down to the licensing, read this, and then we clicked on accept and we went on next, and then we said we want to do custom, we selected this, and then we did next, and that's how we imputed. We are at this point where we clicked on next and it started loading, so we want to continue from here now. So let me pull this back to this screen so that you can see that we are now here on the virtual machine. So, and it is the administrator user that is the first signing user. So I'm just going to give it this password and then going to the next. Okay, so let's click on finish. So what will happen is that this machine again is now going to load and is asking me, how do you want to have the screen, right? Do you want it as a full, large, or small? So I want to pull it at full, right? I'll just click on connect, and then it's just going to connect back to the machine, and then it will ask me to sign in as that administrator user. So okay, so I'll just hit on this. So you can see that it is pretty simple to create a virtual machine. If you can follow that article that I have shown you, I've posted that on my LinkedIn. So if you want to go watch my LinkedIn, go and look at the article on my LinkedIn profile. You can of course check my LinkedIn profile out, or if you want me to send it to you, you can, put the comment here in the comment section requesting for that. So this is just loading up our virtual machine server 2016 operating system from the very beginning, being a new machine that was just newly installed. So no features, nothing is there. So let's just, while this is trying to load up the features, let me just move it to another screen, and then we look at what we have here. So I haven't entered it. Of course, it will tell us to sign in to the operating system, then we will do, and then this is the next thing that we are going to see inside our server, just to see the properties. So it was after this that I went on to create the virtual switch in this write-up, which is also possible, then before I went on to writing on networking. So let me put this back to this screen so that we can see what we now currently have. So we are here inside our server, and of course you can see this is the server manager, and it is up for us to we start installing rules and then going to know how to now use the Windows server. So I just wanted you to have straightforward understanding on how to create a VM in Hyper-V. So I hope this video was helpful to you. If it is, of course, don't forget to give it a like and then subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much for your encouragement. Peace.